So we're in an exciting time right now. We're heading into the decline, the sunsetting of our empire. I think you told me once that if you look at history, actually 250 years or so is kind of the typical time when things begin to not go so well in terms of empires. And
if you have an
large,
empire,
powerful
right,
countries.
it'll be climbing up, and then it'll kind of plateau, and then kind of at that 250 mark, give or take, kind of starts to round that hill. And we're right on schedule for that.
I know there are a lot of factors when it comes to like that you can look back in ancient Rome and the Byzantine Empire or whoever, and I'm sure there are a lot of factors, but one I know for sure that is always there is military.
The British Empire, if we're looking more recent.
Military over expansion.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where we end.
The British Empire.
And what happens is you begin, again, we live in we're still the richest company that's ever existed. So things in the day-to-day still look good, but we're starting to break down where we can't manage basic problems. And it's going to start devolving to the point, I don't know in what type, basically I don't know what time frame, but eventually we're going to stop being able to put out fires in places and all
we
this
have a
crazy-
massive water shortage in the Southwest,
and people are
there's
not going to have
enough
food, and things are going to really start devolving. I don't know what area will be hit for it. I don't know what time
meat
frame.
shortages that have been going on throughout the entire
Absolutely.
year. I mean, every example you're giving of what will happen is already happening.
And here's the thing.
It's on a small, generally localized scale, but these things are already happening.
Here's the thing, though, when it comes to all that, America is very likely going to crash into the ground and devolve. It might not become a ruined state, but it's not going to be the best country in the world. If we're lucky, we'll manage to get our shit together enough in the long term to we're not the biggest and best anymore, but we live comfortable lives. We have a decent society. We've really tried to have basic freedoms and keep things running. That's the best possible future.
Best case scenario, we end up like what Britain is now.
Yeah, but here's the thing: America, I think, could be the first and we shouldn't be an empire. First of all, we should our first move to save the empire is to stop being an empire. We don't have to. America has the tools to continue to be the best country in the world for a long time. I understand China has a lot of impressive things, especially about the way it handles its infrastructure and how efficient it is at modernizing, and its industry is insanely impressive. But you got to it's not talked about enough that they are a human rights abusing nightmare totalitarian hellscape that is so thick with pollution you have to wear masks even before COVID walking around a lot of their big cities, and they shit in the middle of nowhere in the rural areas. They just shit on the ground everywhere. They're not this modern socialist utopia that is going to outpace the US and be this
real socialism has never been tried.
Thralling, beautiful utopia. Maybe down the line. But America we have the resources in terms of raw natural resources and fuel and all these things, and the innovation and the history and the sharing of information and technology and all. We could be the best country for a long time, but we have gotten ourselves so deep in a hole where everything is just corrupt and systemically terrible and poorly managed that it would take such a massive focused generational effort to really set ourselves up for a good future. And I just don't think anyone is really willing to make that push and get us to make those investments. So it's just going to be a decline.
Well, it doesn't help that we're so massively divided. A recent study came out. Actually, it was a poll. Basically went after nominal Democrats, Republicans, and independents. They didn't, go on third-party lines or anything. They just went with independent. And the overall was that 35% of the country supports some sort of peaceful or violent divorce, some sort of secession or balkanization of the U.S. or whatever it is, but they're saying they want to split. And that actually puts us not far behind what the statistics were for the American Revolutionary War, for breaking away from England, and also from the original Civil War back in the 1860s. So a country that divided, Abraham Lincoln said it best, that a country divided amongst itself can't stand, or a house divided amongst itself can't stand. And so I think if you look at that, when we're already facing an imperial decline, and then we just have this deep societal division where we don't see each other as Americans, that's wildly dangerous. The other thing you got to keep in mind too is, people talk about, what would a new civil war or breaking apart of America look like? I'll tell you what it'll look like. I'll tell you what it'll look like. First of all, it would be a modern civil war where, you don't have clear battle lines. You're going to have basically urban versus rural. There's that. But worse is that's not going to last for very long, because the other countries of the world like China and Russia and Iran possibly, or North Korea, they're going to make moves quick. With us out of the way fighting amongst ourselves, not only would they be imperializing and colonializing all over the world, it's very likely that there would be some type of attack on, if not the mainland U.S., they'd be going after like Guam, Alaska, Hawaii, various territories and whatnot. And so this is why it's so dangerous, seeing how truly divided America is. How do we fix it? I genuinely don't know how or if we can at this point.
Who kind of put the dread on me about this was actually Ben Shapiro, because Ben Shapiro, here's one of the I know he makes a lot of bad points, and I think he does make some good ones. And one of the ones he makes is the sad reality is when you're talking about, like, say, the division in America, you can't have unification like all these politicians pretend they want. You can't have it if they because they've so masterfully divided us, in a sense that a lot of people on the left now see America as this fundamentally broken, racist, evil, whatever you want to attribute, colonial, awful nation, and they genocide Native Americans and all that. Like, all that's true.
It is all true.
But I'm just saying, like, they don't see any redeeming qualities in America.
They don't see any
they want
way
it
to fix
torn
it,
down. And then you have people who think America is the best country in the world, and it shouldn't be changed at all. In fact, we should revert to like our even shittier ways.
Right.
Those two people are fundamentally incompatible. And the problem is, and this is, I'm being a little biased against the left, people, I think that in the long run, it's easier to work with people who say America is so good and convince them things need to change for the better than someone saying America is fundamentally can never work for, anyone who's not a white man. You know what I mean? Like, those are.
I could see what you're saying.
And again, we're not talking about probably all the population. I think we're obviously blowing up the extremes as
we
normal.
Are.
But still, if they're in the conversation, that is going to come up. And again, because until the nukes start popping off or until the foreign flags start flying in, the media is going to continue to push that divide.
That's absolutely true. Because at this point, if you look on CNN and MSNBC versus Fox News, because let's be real, in corporate media, that basically is kind of the divide, right? They've set themselves up as the propaganda network of their given party, the Democrat Party, the Republican Party, and what you see is just 24/7 wall-to-wall coverage of why your fellow American is the enemy and how scary they are and how you can't trust them and
why you shouldn't.
And that's just deeply unhealthy. And that's why, shows like The Rising or shows now like Breaking Points, things like that, where you actually have a leftist and conservative come together and work out their differences and talk about these things. That's why that shit's important. Mike and I don't even agree on everything, and we work it out. But there's a certain level of respect for fellow Americans and just a humanity of it that needs to come back. We got to stop viewing everybody as the other or the enemy or as un-American or as American being bad. Otherwise, what we're going to do is things are going to devolve into a situation that is worse, not better, and we're not going to come back from that. And I don't think most people are really prepared for what that's going to entail.